Greetings and welcome back to yet another episode of the Daily Run, and today we're playing as a Lost. So you can see that this video is actually relatively short considering we have to go to the Void. And this is not just because maybe I just cut a lot of the parts out, but I ended up dying rather early on. And the biggest culprit for that, I would say, is basically not a lack of a good strategy. I think that's a good way to put it. And also a lack of some good items that really would increase our DPS or just our usability throughout the rooms. Now, having the Holy Mantle is great because that means you can take a damage on the room, but having only 3.5 damage for the rest of your run, even if your tear delay is good, is just not good enough. While tear delay I think is better in the later stages of the game, having some damage to accompany it is so much more important, because damage is gonna be the reason of why your tear delay is gonna be effective in the first place. So both of these stats are kinda, I would say, dependent on each other, and at a certain point you obviously need both if you actually want to deal with the tough enemies that come down later, and especially against some of the harder bosses. The biggest problem this particular run was actually Mom, in my opinion. So some of the other bosses sure maybe have a lot of HP or maybe a little bit annoying to fight, but having to fight Mom in a position with the Lost, even though you have penetrative shots, even though we have 5 tear delay, which means we're basically the soft cap, being at only 3.5 damage was simply not enough to really get through it in any reasonable amount of time. And you'll see when I actually get to that point just how long it actually takes, even at 5 speed, to try and beat it and just really try to do as much damage as I possibly can, and it just doesn't want to work out. And it's one of those feelings that really sucks, because you feel like maybe you've earned your victory up until that point, you've really gave it your best, you're really trying to try your best shot to succeed and get to the end, but then you just have this one very difficult obstacle in the way, in this case the mom fight, and for some reason you just can't get through it, because maybe something keeps hitting you. In the first case, the mom's eye popped out of the gate, and of course that was a bit hard to dodge, because I didn't even think I was in the range of that. And the second one was when the foot actually stomped down on me. I know both of these attacks are very easily dodgeable, but when you're in the moment, maybe you're not thinking straight, or maybe you're just thinking, wow, this fight is taking forever, and when that happens you often tend to lose focus, and it's very easy to get hit, especially twice on a character like the Lost. And like I always say, the longer you spend in a room, the more chances you actually have of getting hit, and of course that is very prevalent when you don't have enough damage, and when an enemy has a lot of HP, you're just forced to spend a lot of time in the room with them, and even if they're usually easy, it's very likely that you're gonna get hit eventually, because we are only human, and none of us, I think, can play perfectly for a prolonged period of time. But okay, maybe ignoring all of that, if you look at the run at this point, it's actually really good, and not only because of the items we've gotten, but if we kept the D4, and if there were opportunities to maybe get a battery charge, and what's maybe even better, because of the rune bag, we can maybe use a Yarrow rune to try to duplicate those battery charges, so essentially we would be increasing our odds of re-rolling into an ability to revive as any other character that has health. And in this particular run, I think there were a few lucky breaks in that sense, that if you did use the D4 eventually you would get the Dark Judas, and of course with Dark Judas I think the rest of the run would have been much easier, but at this point I was just still kind of struggling. I decided to go via the Shoop the Whoop route just because I figured this is gonna be a little bit more helpful if I actually try to get through some of those harder bosses. Obviously I was banking on getting some more damage later down the road, and especially with the Black Rune I hope maybe I would absorb some of it and then of course use it on the items, but that sadly didn't really happen. I didn't have a chance to I would say increase the potential of my Shoop the Whoop, and as such I don't think it would be even that useful if I did go to boss rush, which was of course my initial intent. And when I saw just how little damage it does against an enemy like Brown in this case, or like I said later Mom, then I just figured maybe this is not gonna be the right item for me, and I should have actually stuck with the D4 in the first place, which is kind of the obvious choice because the D4 is gonna be one of those items that's gonna break the run for you in the majority of cases, but I just figured I'm not really gonna try to rely on this one. Sometimes I go via the D4 route or the D100 route. In this case I decided not to go, and of course I was punished justly for it, but I'm not taking anything back. Of course, as always, I'm playing to the end of the run. I'm not quitting, I'm just kind of sticking with my score. It was my decision, I have to make I made my bed, now I have to lie in it, and of course, and if you just look at maybe the original Shoop the Whoop was great, but then as the run keeps going on, or when I try to do damage, the health bar just isn't moving anywhere, and it's frustrating to some extent, and I'm not the person that's usually frustrated, but in the moment it was a bit frustrating because I knew it was gonna take such a long time, and even though I missed boss rush, I knew I was gonna miss Hush as well because we just really had no DPS. So at this point we did finish the run, we did end up dying quite early, which is obviously a bummer, but what can you do, right? 234th place is, I would say, ideal, but it's, I would say, late in the day, and of course considering it's a hard loss daily, I think it's excusable. Obviously we have to try our best to maybe have a better score later down the road, and especially maybe tomorrow, not specifically tomorrow, but hopefully tomorrow, I would say, so we can really start improving our average again. But as it is, I would say this is a hard daily to some extent. Of course, if you don't maybe go via the default route, I think it's a good challenge if you actually want to test your skills. We finished the run when we did. I would have liked to maybe go 1 or 2 stages more just to really cement our, I would say, spot in the top 100 rankings, but as it is, still I think it was enjoyable to a certain extent, and even if maybe it wasn't a good showmanship of skill, at least I hope it's a cautionary tale. And with that said, I hope you enjoyed this one, guys, and I hope to see you next time.